Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. I hope all of you are having a wonderful day as we get things started here. We have with us, well, hey, they were guests a couple months ago, but we always like catching back up, seeing what they've done since. And hey, if you didn't catch them the first time, this is going to be a great interview to catch again. So joining us today is going to be a company called dinCloud. And we have a link to them in the show notes, talking to them in just a moment. But we'll be hearing all about their services, what they do, and how the cloud, for businesses at this point, it's as crucial as having an office building. It's really, really important for a lot of companies out there to have the proper infrastructure. So, but before we talk about that, a few things I should definitely mention, including computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything and anything for today's show. Be that a link to our guest website, be that any articles that we do later on in the program, just all of it will be there right there on our homepage. Also, be sure to check out the video stream where you can watch Computer America, not just listen, and you'll be able to see product, services, their website. I believe our guest today is actually on video, so hey, you'll be able to see that as well. Check that out. And the last thing is, of course, our contest, which is still ongoing, brought to you by Logitech, and a new winner Friday. So every single Friday, we give away a prize. So check that out. Now, with all that being said, why don't we go ahead and just jump into our interview? And once again, we have joining us Mr. Ali Din. He is the Chief Marketing Officer for dinCloud. So Ali, thank you for joining us here on Computer America. How you doing? Oh, just one moment. That would
be back on Computer America.
Perfect. Yeah, great to have you back. And so like I said, long-term listeners are going to know who you are, but for everyone else, why don't you give a quick overview of dinCloud and how you found yourself, and I assume the name is not a coincidence, give a little bit of background on your relationship with the company.
Sure. So the company's been around since 2011, and we really started off because there was a lot of talk at the time about cloud services, but particularly around the hosted virtual desktop, which today many people call desktop as a service. And what we were trying to figure out is there's all these challenges that companies have around deploying software, maintaining their PC fleet, and we were looking for a way to virtualize the desktop because at this time the servers had already been virtualized, but the desktop had not yet really gotten into that realm of advanced technology. So we embarked on a lot of R&D and spent a lot of time doing that. And then we realized that as people would set up their desktops, then they would also want to connect their servers, their applications. And so eventually we became a full service cloud services company. And so that's what we're doing today for medium and large businesses. And we actually just completed a merger. So now we offer both IT outsourcing services, and then we also have business process outsourcing services as well. So that adds to our capabilities and gives full circle of basically anything as a service to a customer.
So yeah, and just to clarify that last point, so the merger helps you acquire a way to provide technical support where before you were providing the backbone of cloud computing.
That's right. So previously we were doing a little bit of services, and now it goes beyond just IT and technical services. We can actually do entire business processes. So if someone has accounting or they have a ordering process or they need lead generation services, we offer a whole slew of services that we do across a variety of industries: transportation, medical, and as well as just overall horizontally, just generating leads for companies.
I got you. I got. So, okay, that makes perfect sense. And so, why don't we go ahead and talk about kind of where it has been for the past year, and kind of where it's going in 2018, because like the only real time that we hear about cloud computing, I think it's taken over behind the scenes, but we hear more about it when different service providers such as Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure Cloud, things like that. We only hear about them when they go down. Uh,
Mhm.
and it's happened a couple of times, but overall I would say it's pretty steady. um 2017, I mean, how was cloud computing and how's it looking into the future, even with some of these hiccups? Is it still going strong?
It definitely is. So, Amazon's public company, Microsoft is starting to give out more information. Google Compute Platform is really coming in. So you really have these big three players, and IBM's a part of that too. But really, the big three would be Amazon and Google as well as Microsoft, and they've really been pushing to get the awareness out there, which is great. But at the same time, with that awareness, you have a lot of companies that are also jumping in. And so the market is getting very fragmented in a way. You're getting a lot of players that are offering cloud services. And then you're getting some specialization happening as well. But uh, when we look at it, we see you have these big public cloud providers, and where we're trying to differentiate is really on providing more of a hosted private cloud to customers, so that they still have that security and control, uh, which is a bit harder in these bigger public clouds. So you have that kind of coming in through 2017. A little less noise about outages, but a lot more noise about breaches, ransomware. These were the big topics in 2017. 2018, you're going to see more of this ransomware and breach going on. A lot of talk around, increases in those, and so that's, I think, a concern for many companies, because we've seen it happen in the big ones, and now I think people are starting to see it happen just more randomly in smaller organizations, medium-sized organizations, and so it's starting to affect more and more people, and they don't really have a solution around it. So we expect 2018 a lot more companies to turn to the cloud. We've kind of on that adoption curve. We've kind of gone through the early adopters, and now we're really into that. The early majority is really kicking in for 2018, and that at that point you only really have the bulk of the third or side of the market. So we still have to cross over into that late majority to really see the big traction. So we're really, I would say, now on the now the adoption is starting.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And I mean, this is a little bit recent. I'm not sure how much you've been paying attention to it. We are still, like later on in the program, we do a new segment, and we're gonna, kind of dive into it. But I believe they called it like Spectre and memory burn or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. But essentially, it's 2017. You said it was a lot of ransomware, a lot of breaches, things like that. And what a way to kick off 2018 than Intel coming out and saying that, oh, by the way, every processor out there has a security flaw, and all of our data is potentially able to be read. Before it even gets to higher processes. It's something that I hope is not going to be a continuation through 2018. But when you say that there are security breaches, I mean, it's certainly a problem for cloud computing. But you say that you obviously, that's your realm. Providing secure cloud computing is the key, not just doing away with cloud computing.
That's right. So yeah, it was Spectre and Meltdown with
That one.
Intel that just happened, and definitely would recommend people doing their patches and updates on their software on their personal devices, and then obviously at the office that are going to take care of it, for larger organizations to help the employees with that component. So that's one sort of what I would call kind of this malware or threats that are coming out to both individuals as well as organizations, because I mean this is quite pervasive. But the breaches that I was actually referring to, so you have ransomware, which is an issue because it can affect an individual, or it can affect multiple people within the organization that have critical data. But the other issue is still just the original crimes of lost or stolen laptops and data being stolen or lost from that way, because you still have to do these disclosures about your data. If your laptop got stolen, it got lost, companies still have to make those embarrassing disclosures. So those are the pieces that are still out there. So you have new threats coming in, plus you have the old threats. So it's just becoming maybe a few years ago we would have thought that security was everything was under control, and all of a sudden now we're in this new era where everything you have to be paranoid all the time.
That's not what we want, but it would probably
Yeah.
it would probably serve you well and keep you safe. But so let's go ahead with our next topic, because you have here headlines about digital transformation, and that seems a pretty ambiguous term. It can go a lot of ways. Uh, what does the term digital transformation kind of mean to
Sure. So digital transformation for myself, or in general, when I think about it, is for an organization to really adapt to the modern workforce. So we keep hearing, millennials are entering, and the workforce, and they have special more, they want to have more flexibility in the way that they do their work. So this digital transformation gives you, as an organization, the ability to be more flexible, have more modern IT, but that also means that you can be more of an agile organization. So what that really translates to is, if I can digitize my business process, and there's a few different ways to do that, but the more digital I become, then I'm not depending on legacy software, I'm not depending on legacy hardware, and if I need to make a change, I can make that quickly. So as you move through this journey, it can be, for some organizations, it can be quite a major lift for them. And then for smaller organizations that are already doing SaaS and are already leveraging the cloud, it's a lot easier for them to add those components in. So it's really about saying, okay, how can I deploy software faster to my employees, and how can I make it so that they can communicate more easily? Do they have to be tied to just a cell phone, or can I make it so that they're on these unified communication tools that will allow me to communicate no matter what device I'm on, no matter what location I'm in? And that really changes the dynamic for people that are more remote workers, and being able to adapt to that scenario as well.
now? We actually did that here of sorts. I mean, we didn't have to call in, a specialist like you guys, but for the radio show, I remember when I first started coming in, we had ISDN lines, we had lots of specialized hardware that we had to do the show, and over say the past 3 years, I've been working on it where just being able to have software mixers instead of hardware mixers, being able to have everything I need in a software form rather than a digital form. It really, sometimes a computer crashes and you have to get rid of it and get a new one. If everything's, kind of software related, I'm much more mobile. I can, kind of get this up and get the whole operation up and going at another location. It's something certainly I think a lot of companies should not really underestimate, because, not being tied to a central location, it's almost liberating, or even just I feel safer with my business when it's not tied to a single location.
Absolutely, yeah. The freedom, yeah, I think you used the perfect words there, that liberation or that freedom that you can have when you're on this more software, digital type of a platform and infrastructure. And like you mentioned, if you have a computer crashing, that stops you in your tracks, because now that machine is preventing you from getting your work done. And if that's your only tool that you have, now that's a problem. But if your actual desktop became digital, now you could actually switch over to another device, or even borrow someone's device and still keep working within your own applications and documents. So that really makes it a lot more, like you said,
So,
liberating and flexibility.
and I want you to kind of get into the idea of what is making this possible because, whenever a company comes on the show and they say that, hey, we have the greatest new thing, I always like to ask what facilitated that new thing because if they really can't point to anything that, we just kind of came up with it, then you kind of get a little suspicious. But I mean, is it the advancements in internet connection speed? Is it the processing power of your systems over there? What has led to just this digital transformation, as we called it earlier? What is the driving factor?
Yeah, there's actually a convergence of things happening right now. So one is the internet connectivity. It's more ubiquitous now. Speeds are much faster, so people can consume the data and go uploads and download speeds are really much more in sync. So that's one component from the connectivity standpoint. The other piece is from a infrastructure perspective. So for us, in terms of delivering a desktop as a service, our back end has become a lot more robust with the type of technology. So we're using hyper-converged infrastructure, which means that we can have the storage, the compute, as well as all the processing power is really all in a modular system, and it can run on these SSD drives. So everything is going a lot faster. So that really helps deliver the service better. And then the third component of it is the operating system and the software out there with Microsoft Windows 10 and with Windows Server 2016. Microsoft has added so many different capabilities that it's this combination of all these three components has really made this solution a lot more different than what people had seen even just 18 months ago.
Right. So, this is, of course, all well and good, but I've worked for other organizations that did have to keep certain security standards when it came to their systems. And that can take a lot of forms. Manage a workforce, let's say 50 or 100 people who have to, you hire someone, you fire someone, you have to, revoke credentials, you have to give out credentials. I mean, this kind of thing. And, especially millennials, they love to do the whole bring your own device. They love it on their own phones, their own tablets, their own computers. Security wise, how hard has this been to manage? And is the security, kind of pick up the phone, call you guys, and you guys will handle it? Or have you gotten it to a point where, an individual can do it from their side? Because I think that would be the most convenient thing.
Yeah, yeah. The provisioning of the services has been automated from the beginning. So that was one of the things that we had spent a lot of our R&D on is how do we allow companies to spin up a virtual desktop automatically themselves and assign it to a user or change the resources. Maybe the user's doing some hardcore applications. They need more memory. They need more CPU power. So they can enable that dynamically. They can add it. They can remove it as well. And if someone leaves, they can instantly remove that access as well, all through self-service tools. So from that perspective, the provisioning and the management control is much that's very simple for a company to handle. The other thing we've done from a security standpoint is put a lot of that security, perimeter security, already into the solution. So you have multiple layers of security that we've done. We've done both physical security and cybersecurity. So the data centers that we're in are very well protected from a physical perspective, not just on the outside of the building, but as you enter into the building and you get closer to our servers. The front of our racks have different codes than the back side of the racks, so that people on the front, that need to do certain things. So the front side of the equipment are different from the people doing stuff on the back where the power and the connections are. And then on a cybersecurity perspective, we've done a lot of built-in capabilities around protecting people. So isolating their network, and this is where that hosted private cloud comes in, is where each individual company gets its own firewall protected environment, and it has we partnered with a company called ThreatStop so that we can help companies with all these intrusion protection and detection type of capabilities. And so all these things are coming in as pre-bundled with the solution because we don't want to have companies and their users having to think about this stuff and having to add it in. Because again, going back to these big public cloud providers, they're very big, they're very complex, and we've also been reading a lot of stories about people just get overwhelmed and they leave gaps in the security because they didn't know that they had to flip a lever to make sure that they have to keep the door locked, so to speak,
No,
or a port
it's
rather.
no, it's absolutely true. I mean, that's something that we try to drive home about. Whenever we have security companies on the show, is that a security company's job is to essentially do security for like there's always basic things that a company can do to help themselves, but a bakery that maybe has a shop an online shopping platform. They aren't security professionals. They're bakers. They're these companies that hire you, they're probably not security companies. So being able to add these in kind of by default or kind of automated in the background, certainly something is that is definitely desired. So with all this, I think it's time to people, if maybe they might be confused about how someone would actually go about using dinCloud. What areas are you finding a lot of growth in, or what areas do you find people are really using your platform? Is this for, I don't know, retail? Is this for, kind of people working from home? Who is really using dinCloud?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. I would say, usually this is going to be more of at least a mid-sized organization that would find the ability to really take advantage of this because they have those pains where, like you said, is uh, they have, a growing company, or they're already a mature company, but they don't have all the resources, especially when it comes to cloud. It's taking a lot more sophisticated skill sets of knowing not just one aspect of the data center, but networking and security and all these components. So having that capability of leveraging someone like us at that size is very helpful. And usually we're pretty horizontal in terms of the verticals, but yeah, retail definitely. We're working with organizations in retail, in transportation, healthcare, financial services. These are areas that we're seeing quite a few customers coming on board. Higher education is another one. And then when we drill down into some of these, for example, with financial services, there's insurance companies, and then you have the subsets of insurance organizations as well, or you have lending organizations. You have residential, commercial. So we're seeing a good mix across that. And then in the healthcare side, we're actually seeing an interesting, type of different units of the healthcare organizations, whether it's senior care, which is starting to grow, and those organizations looking for a more flexible way to provide the IT function, since that's not their core business. So it's pretty much across the board, but those are some of the ones we see quite a bit, and we're getting more traction and specialization around.
So you said mid-sized company, and there's always a trade-off, when you do things like this. Talk about some of the net positives that your customers usually find. Is there any increase in productivity, or is it strictly on the security side? Where's the real value proposition for dinCloud?
Well, security is definitely one of the major benefits, because as a cloud service provider and as someone that's already bundling in the security, for us, it's critical that we're providing security that is top notch, is reliable, is dependable, and our systems are very highly available, have redundancy built into them. So that's a definite benefit that, from economies of scale, really helps organizations. So that really ties into the cost side of things too. You have the maintenance costs, and then you also have just the initial cost of building this infrastructure out. And we have a Microsoft case study with the customer. Microsoft went in and did the review with them, and they literally saved 50% of their IT budget by working with us and migrating basically their entire IT infrastructure. So the servers, the desktops, the applications, the databases, everything that they were doing. And we've expanded that relationship now into providing them some additional services as well to manage that infrastructure, which we didn't do previously. The the other thing that companies find very beneficial in our service, because it's slightly different from these public cloud providers, is more of a flat rate pricing model. And so a customer doesn't have to worry about whether it's the CFO or controller. about how much that invoice is going to be at the end of the day, because they're using databases and they're pinging their data back and forth, and some people are jumping in and using different resources. It's a lot more predictable model and invoice at the end of the month versus something where every month you see a different charge on your Azure, your uh, AWS bill.
Right.
So that's actually the predictability is very helpful for customers. And I think what they like about us is that they still maintain the control. So they still get to have complete control over their infrastructure, or they can have a partner come in and help them with managing their infrastructure. And we're very transparent about that. So, customers can tour our data centers, which the big guys won't do, and so we have a lot more flexibility there as well.
Yeah, like it's like a kind of touring Willy Wonka's factory when Google does allow cameras into their back end servers. It's very interesting, but they keep them very, very close. So, being able to see where your data is kept, very cool. So I mean, let's see, where can we kind of end with this? So why would, and so talk to us more about your website, because we have it up here, and you can kind of poke through it. You can request a quote. You can obviously talk to someone about what you need. Walk people through your website and what they can find if they go there.
Sure, sure. So our website's really set up to be informative for someone, because we understand that people want to do their research before they speak with us. So we try to provide as much information on the different products. And then we also have a resources section where people can take a look at the videos we've built out, webinars. But I would say the one area that we really try to focus on is articles that we put into our blog. So we try to write articles that are industry specific, that are timely in terms of what's going on in the news, concerns that someone would have for cloud services, and really tips and advice as well. So that's probably one key resource in terms of the type of people that may come on the website that are trying to do their research. And then of course, we'd love to be able to offer demos, whether they want to watch a video of the demo first or actually request their own personalized demo. And then from there, they can decide if they want to have a conversation.
Makes sense. So if I'm going to kind of leave it there, and of course we have a link to dinCloud in the show notes. But Ali, I'll leave you with the last word. Is there anything else people need to know about? Did we miss anything?
No, I mean it's again, appreciate having the opportunity to come back on the show, Ben. And I think the one thing I would probably say, we are entering 2018, and what we're looking at in the future is really a lot of buzz around AI, artificial intelligence, automation. So these are also things that we look at in terms of how to enhance worker productivity. And so that's something that we're focused on. We're also focused on protecting customers and their data. And so again, as you pointed people over to the website, that's a great resource for them to go to and learn more.
Yeah, there's a lot of room for growth in what you're doing, and AI. I mean, it's already making waves, and I think people really underestimate how much in 10 years even AI is really going to change the workforce as we know it. So I think you're in a good spot, and a lot of innovation to come. But Ali, thank you for coming back on the show. This was a great update, and looking forward to having again. Oh, just real quick, are you guys heading out to CES in any capacity?
We are not at the moment, no.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no, we were gonna say, hey, maybe we could, see you guys out there. But hey, in the meantime, Ali, thank you so much, and everyone, one more time, dinCloud, DINCloud.com. You can check them out. And until next time, sir, thank you so much.
All right, Ben. Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye bye. All right, everyone. So there he goes, and yeah, we continue on here with computer and technology news in just a bit. So this will be, and hey, we're gonna head into that. And like I said, though, a lot of different news stories as we kind of cover. I think the first one that we really need to cover is Meltdown and Spectre. And this is everything having to do with the security flaws in Intel-based processors, or x86 architecture processors. And it's pretty fundamental, pretty low level, and it will have immediate effects on the computer industry. So We're going to cover that one in great detail and more coming back to Computer America. Stay tuned.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 31 minutes past the hour as we continue on here with computer and technology. And yeah, brought to you by Fire Dragon Security. And hey, why don't we just get started? By the way, if you missed the first part of the show, check it out, dinCloud.com, and a link to it in the show notes. Also, be sure to check out, well, hey, every other show. The show is found on, of course, the Internet Radio Network, IRN. You can find us there live, and of course, find us in podcast form after the show, wherever great podcasts are heard. But here we go, computer and technology news. All right. So we're going to go ahead and cover this article. And this was a very well written one. I unfortunately have not been able to weed through all this myself. And even if I did, I'm not even sure I would completely understand it. Because, again, this is something that is pretty fundamental to how the architecture of Intel chips is designed. And, hey, this is not common knowledge to everyone. So here we go, and this coming to us from Ars Technica, Peter Bright, and yeah, this will be our one-stop shop for this huge thing called Meltdown and Spectre, where every modern processor has an unfixable security flaw. And where it's not unfixable, I don't believe, but if you do, then it, causes problems. But here we go, saying that Windows, Linux, and Mac OS have all received security patches that significantly alter how operating systems handle virtual memory in order to protect against a hitherto undisclosed flaw. And that this is little more than a little notable. It has been clear that Microsoft and the Linux kernel developers have been informed of some non-public security issues and have been rushing to fix it. As I understand it, fun fact, there was another article we're not going to do, but I believe the Mac OS, it was like update 11.13 something. Mac actually fixed this about a month ago. So if you're on Mac, already good to go. Now that we know what the flaw is, and this was supposed to be embargoed until next week, but they lifted the embargo early because, hey, everyone was talking about it. They said that it's not great news because there are in fact two related families of flaws with similar impact, and only one of them has an easy fix. And the flaws have been named Meltdown and Spectre. There you go. And that Meltdown was independently discovered by three groups: researchers from the Technical University of Graz in Australia, German security firm Cerberus Security, and Google's Project Zero. And Spectre was discovered independently by Project Zero and independent researcher Paul Coker. There you go. So these were not disclosed immediately by the companies because they were discovered by independent researchers. So let's see. They said that at their heart, both attacks take advantage of the fact that similar processors execute instructions speculatively. saying that all modern processors perform speculative execution to a greater or lesser extent. They'll assume that, for example, a given condition will be true and execute instructions accordingly. If it later turns out that the condition was false, speculative executed instruction are discarded as if they had no effect. Essentially, things like they assume that if you have an application open and you've had it open for a couple of seconds, odds are the application is going to continue to be running for the next, for the immediate next couple of seconds. And that little bit of a buffer time, if it can essentially get its ducks in a row, it will make the processor seem faster because it's going out and prefetching what it assumes is going to be happening in the next immediate steps. So, and like I said, if it's not exactly what it calls for, then even though it's queued up, it can still throw it out and it can go out, fetch the proper one, and bring it back. It's, again, a very rudimentary explanation, but it shows that this effect, it works so well that it was found in every Intel processor going back 10 years. And this is where the security flaw was found. So while the discarded effects of this speculative execution don't alter the outcome of the program, they do make changes to the lowest level architecture of the processor. Saying that, for example, they said that they can load into cache even if it turns out that the data was never, or at least had never been loaded in the first place, and that the presence of the data in the cache can then be detected because accessing it will be a little quicker than if it weren't cached. So while other data structures in the processor, such as the branch predictor, blah, blah, you can also be probed and have their performance measured. So essentially, they're saying that these prefetches, the place where they kept the prefetches in the memory, they were not properly secured as if they were covered by the operating system, because they were loaded before anything else could be done to them. And if you happen to be, or if you happen to have access to the memory, you could then read everything that was preloaded but not executed. And this is something where if you were able to get malware, get those, get the contents of your memory uploaded somewhere else, you could have things that were never explicitly accessed, but you could read them. You could read documents, you could read programs, you could know exactly what was happening. Essentially, it leaked memory. This is a bad thing, as we like to call it in the field. So they said that the first problem, Meltdown, is the one that stimulated the flurry of operating system patches. By the way, everyone, obviously, update your operating system. Saying that it uses speculative execution to leak kernel data to regular user programs. Saying that they gave it in, essentially the high-level summary. They're saying that the operating system virtualized system memory and the use of page tables to map from virtual memory addresses to physical addresses, and how processors cache those mappings, and how the kernel page table mapping is shared between processes in order to maximize the value of the special cache. You can tell by the ease that I am rambling this stuff off. I am well versed in this kind of field, and if I'm having a hard time with it, I'm not saying that anyone else is, less smarter than I am. But if I'm having trouble with this, you can be sure that 95% of people out there are going to have even more trouble. So, saying that while all modern processors, including those from Intel, AMD, and ARM, perform speculation around memory accesses, Intel's processors do so in a particular aggressive way. And that operating system memory has associated metadata that whether it can be accessed from programs or is restricted to access from the kernel. So, and again, the security researchers are claiming something that Intel asserted, that AMD and ARM are also affected by this bug. And this is where AMD has been very vocal, saying that they are not infected and that anyone saying otherwise is being deceitful. So, anyways, let's continue saying that Intel chips allow user programs to speculatively use kernel data, and the access check happens sometime after the instruction starts executing, saying that the speculative execution is properly blocked, but the impact that speculation has on the processor cache can be measured, and with careful timing to infer the value stored in kernel memory. Again, essentially reading information that was never technically accessed, but through the processor, you can access certain information. And that's very bad for. So let's see, let's go ahead and skip through this one because this article is a bit longer. But let's just say that the impact of this change will vary widely depending on the workload. And this is essentially the change that they're doing. These are the updates or how the operating system talks to the processor, which is, again, what is going to change the efficiency of your processor. And the impact will vary widely. And they said that applications that are heavily dependent on user programs, don't call into the kernel often, will see very little impact. Where, for example, games should see very little change. But applications that call into the operating system extensively, typically to perform disk or network operations, can see a much more substantial impact. And that in synthetic benchmarks that do nothing but make kernel calls, the difference can be substantial, dropping from 5 million kernel calls per second to 2 to 3. So 5 million down to 2 to 3 million. Yeah, that's that's like a 50% drop in performance. Again, that is through synthetic benchmarks that only focus on that particular part of the processor, but there's going to be change, and maybe not for completely for end users, but for a lot of systems that, hey, businesses rely on, this is going to be big. So Spectre, this is the second part of the security flaw, saying that owners of AMD and ARM systems shouldn't rest easy, and that's thanks to Spectre, where Spectre is a more general attack based on a wider range of speculative features, and that the paper describes using speculation around, for example, array-bound checks and branches instructions information, with proof of concept attacks being successful on AMD, ARM, and Intel systems. So these attacks have already been verified, they do work. Spectre attacks can be used both to leak information from the kernel to user programs, but also from virtualization hypervisors to guest systems. So essentially access from outside. And here's the problem. Spectre, the second one, doesn't offer any straightforward solution, saying that speculation is essential to high-performing processors, and while there may be limited ways to block certain kinds of speculative execution. I've been saying that so many times. They're saying that generally they don't actually fix the problem on what they're doing. Because, you may be just wondering, well, why don't they just do away with this? If it's so riddled with security flaws, just do away with speculative execution. Well, that's a lot of where the processor speeds are getting their performance boost. And it's not just about, the material that you make your processor out of or how many transistors you're able to squeeze into them. It's also about the software and how it interacts with your hardware. And a lot of the advancements happen on the software side. This is the software. So they don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it turns out the bathwater is kind of severely polluted. So don't put your baby in there. And so let's see, for typical desktop users, the risk is arguably less significant. While both Meltdown and Spectre can have value in expanding the scope of an existing flaw, neither one is sufficient on its own to, example, break out of a web browser. So, like many things, this is obviously a proof of concept, and this can be used in conjunction with a number of other security flaws that, they may be able to find in end user programs and others. This itself is not going to bring down the destruction of the internet. But this is a very fundamental flaw that over time we may see as, how to best put it, we may see as one of the bigger security vulnerabilities. As in, you mix this with ingredient A, B, and C, suddenly it becomes a much bigger deal. But as of this moment, it's something for security researchers to really lose sleep over. So there you have that. And why don't we go ahead and continue on with computer and technology news? And yeah, we have a lot of other stories to talk about. All right, how about we do this one? We'll do this one. It's not as doom and gloom as every processor ever is weakened in its security state, but rather this is something that, hey, this is kind of interesting. So this is coming to us from Ars Technica, and that's the universe. You know that thing. It's all around us. It's everything. It's you may have seen it before. Is producing massive stars than we thought, and this means more supernova, black holes, and a model for star formation. This is pretty cool. So, hey, we're just going to glaze over this article, but I did find it really, really cool that I believe it was universe has about 10 times as many stars as we previously thought. So, for fans of drama, the universe can be a bit of disappointment. Most of the stars it currently produces are red M dwarfs with masses less than half of the sun, and that these will burn fuel intently for trillions of years and then gradually fade. And that massive stars with 10 or more times the material found in the sun will explode and possibly leave an exotic object like a black hole behind. But they're relatively rare in the present universe. And the article says, or so we thought, a new survey of a star-forming region adjacent to the Milky Way has found an excess of stars with 30 or more times the mass of the sun, and an even larger excess above 60 times the mass of the sun. Wow. And that the finds suggest that we could see a lot more supernova and black holes, and it also implies that there might be something fundamentally off about our models for star formation. Because, when you are, dozens of times underestimating the amount of large, heavy objects, your models might be off by just a tad. But there you go. So, and, the article has some more, and you can read more about it. This coming to us from Science. Yeah. But yeah, the universe is producing more large stars than previously thought. Pretty cool. All right. Something a little bit more down to earth, something a little bit more you can get your hands on, because you can't get your hands on supernova, but you can get your hands on, shortly, a Microsoft Cortana controlled thermostat. And the crowd goes mild. It's one of those things that's Microsoft probably should have done a decade ago, or 5 years ago. Well, Microsoft shares pre-order details for the $319 Cortana thermostat, and you can see it if you're watching the video portion. We have it up on screen. To be fair, it's a very good looking thermostat. As far as thermostats go, it looks gorgeous. But it's Cortana, and that's going to be a hard selling point. So here we go. Microsoft unveiled its Cortana powered thermostat, which they called Glass, G-L-A-S. One S, not two S's, back in July. And now we have more details about it, where the software giant partnered with Johnson Controls and first in-room thermostat to create the device and its beauty. And they said that it also comes with a hefty price, $319 I remember there are other companies, Honeywell, Nest of that are significantly cheaper and are currently on the market. So they said that the pre-orders are available now and that delivery will happen sometime in March of this year. So Glass is powered by Windows 10 Internet of Things Core. There you go. And yeah, and features a gorgeous translucent display. I mean, it looks pretty good. And you can control the temperature, check the weather, monitor both indoor and outdoor air quality, and more. Where Glass will keep track of the air quality and adjust its settings to ensure your home is comfortable. Where like Nest, Glass will learn your preferred temperatures and routine and make adjustments as needed. So users can also take advantage of Cortana, which is integrated into the smart thermostat to control Glass. And you can say things like, hey, Cortana, adjust the temperature to 70 degrees. I apologize to anyone out there who has Cortana and she is now pulling her hair out because she can't adjust temperature just yet. But, and they said that the thermostat will respond accordingly. And Glass will also have similar functionality to a smart speaker where Cortana can check traffic, take a look at weather, answer questions, and even tell you about your calendar. So essentially, the thermostat is also working as a limited smart speaker. I'm hesitant to call it a smart speaker as compared to Google Home, compared to Alexa. Yeah, it's probably nowhere near as functional as those happen to be. So it's certainly a good-looking thermostat. That's what the author said. And its transparent display would make an excellent conversation. Well, you know, as much as people go, hey, is that a thermostat? That's really neat. Why don't we talk about that for 15? Really. But they said that $320 isn't cheap, and especially when you consider that the least expensive Nest is $170. And Nest makes pretty good thermostats. However, if you're planning on using the Glass as both a thermostat and a smart speaker, the price becomes a little bit more palatable. The question is I don't know, is Microsoft in a position to do this? Microsoft needs market share. They need to get into people's homes. And at this point, I mean, Google has a bit with their little puck-like Google Mini. Amazon has been pushing their speakers like crazy. And Microsoft is currently, sure, they have lots of computers, but they don't have a smartphone. They don't have any devices other than desktop computers in people's homes. And that's a problem. I'm not sure that coming in at the top levels or at the higher price point is what Microsoft really needs to do to start to overcome that hump. But regardless, I'm not an industry analyst for Microsoft. I will just say that, hey, starting in March, they will have it available. Check it out if you're interested. And again, it does look pretty darn cool. All right, we have time for maybe one, maybe two more. And why don't we go ahead and talk about, yeah, sure, let's do this one. France, they're a company. They do bread, they do cheese, they do wine, they do champagne. And I'm sure they do other things other than food. Well, now looks like they're going to be taking on the fight, as they called it, fake news. And I know you may be thinking, Ben, this gets a little close to politics. Well, it's not just about politics. This is a legitimate fear that a lot of people have, and justifiably so. That with the internet in its current state, it's great. I love it. You know, hey, the free exchange and expression of information. But we're actually discerning proper, well-vetted information, and those that are just made up on the spot, that's something that really should be tackled. And, well, it says that France is going to be up for the job, where they say they want to introduce new laws to fight fake news. So let's see how they do it. This is coming to us from Engadget. and that during a media briefing yesterday, the French President Emmanuel Macron said that he would soon introduce legislation aimed at combating fake news. And that under the new law, websites publishing sponsored content would have to disclose who paid for it, and fees for the content would have a cap. And additionally, authorities would have the power to remove fake content and block websites if they're found to be publishing fake news. I think that if we want to protect liberal democracy, we must be strong and have clear rules. That, of course, gets into a lot of sticky, legalese, and it's going to be a moving target. So let's see what they do. So fake news and actions by foreign groups have become a major focus since the US presidential election, and particularly when it comes to social media. And they said that investigations into Russian-backed Facebook ads are ongoing in the United States and in the UK, and that Facebook and Twitter, and that they've asked both Facebook and Twitter to provide information on any evidence of Russian meddling during the Brexit referendum, and that Facebook has made efforts to curtail the spread of misinformation during Germany's major election last year, as well as France's. So, and this isn't going to be just a one-stop solution. This isn't just going to be, hey, this is okay in France, so this is what it is. No, it's going to be, hey, Facebook is going to try, Twitter's going to try, every government around the world that wants to protect their own forms of democracy, they're going to try. It's going to be a patchwork of what they feel is acceptable by who pays for what and how much of it you actually see without the information actually being verified. So, with online content, Macron has also called out TV and radio outlets, specifically fingering Russian network Sputnik and Russia Today as propagating misinformation. And at one point last year, he even banned the outlets from his campaign events. And in that respect, Macron has also said yesterday that the country's media watchdog, the CSA, will be able to combat and attempt to will be able to combat any attempt at destabilization by foreign state-controlled TV stations. If you're looking for your technology bend, it's that, well, this is probably going to of regulations as to who can buy ads and where those ads are coming from and who's financing these ads, which is, hey, information is key. But the technology then is that someone with bad ideas, but people like them, they can spread and people can take them as gospel even if they're not true. And with the ease of access to information, just because you don't like it, that doesn't mean that the information is wrong. Or, like this set of information, it confirms what you like, it confirms what you know. That doesn't mean that any information to the contrary doesn't exist. And in fact, there is a way to measure this. There is a way to combat this. And hey, countries, companies around the world are going to be working on it. So there you have it. Folks, we're just flat out of time. If you want to, if you feel kind, join us in tomorrow as we have a company on called Tribe. Yeah, check that out, Tribe. And yeah, they're a company, I believe they're cryptocurrency, if I'm not mistaken. It's, they're also about exactly what we were talking about. Tribe is a social science global consensus engine that researches and clarifies truth through human swarm crowd wisdom. Essentially a way to pinpoint what is fake and what is real using Tribe. So hey, that tied in very, very nicely. Everyone tune in tomorrow as we talk to Tribe and all that they do and how they do it. Folks, and in the meantime, be sure to sign up for our contest, check out the podcast, and more. Folks, catch you next time. We're here, Computer America. See you then. Bye-bye.